The moment my daughter stood up in court and pointed at me, I felt something inside my chest break. Her voice was calm, confident, almost proud. "Your Honor," she said, "my father will receive nothing from my mother's $10 million inheritance. Nothing. Not a single dollar. Not the house we built together. Not the business I spent 40 years growing. Nothing." And the worst part, she didn't even look ashamed. Instead, she looked at me the way someone looks at a stranger, someone who no longer matters. But what my daughter didn't know, what her husband didn't know, what no one in that courtroom knew, was that my late wife had prepared one final surprise before she died. A document hidden inside a sealed legal file. And the moment the judge opened it, my daughter's confident smile slowly disappeared. "My name is Daniel. I am 64 years old. And the day my own daughter tried to erase me from my wife's legacy was the day the truth destroyed everything she thought she had won." Welcome to my YouTube channel Moral Echoes, where silence speaks. Grief is a strange thing. When you lose the person you've loved for 40 years, the world doesn't explode or collapse the way you expect. Instead, it becomes painfully quiet. Too quiet. After my wife Margaret passed away, the house felt different. Every room carried her memory. Her favorite chair by the window. The half-finished crossword puzzle she left on the kitchen table. The small coffee mug she used every morning that still sat beside the sink. 40 years of life together, suddenly reduced to memories. My name is Daniel Carter, and at 64 years old, I had just buried the love of my life. Margaret wasn't just my wife. She was my best friend, my partner, my reason to keep going. We met in 1981 in a small diner where she worked while finishing nursing school. I remember the first time I saw her. She had this warm smile that made the entire room feel brighter. I was young, broke, and working construction at the time. But somehow she believed in me. She believed in me long before anyone else did. When we got married, we had almost nothing. Our first apartment had leaky pipes and creaky floors. Sometimes we could barely pay rent. But Margaret never complained. Instead, she would laugh and say, "One day we'll look back at this and smile." And she was right. Because years later, I started a small construction company with just 2 employees and an old pickup truck. It wasn't easy. There were months when I thought everything would collapse. But Margaret stood beside me through every failure, every risk, every sleepless night. Slowly the business grew. 2 employees became 10. 10 became 50. Then 100. By the time I turned 55, our company was worth millions. But money never changed Margaret. She still cooked dinner every night. Still volunteered at the local hospital. Still treated people with kindness. The only thing she truly cared about was our daughter. Emily. Our daughter. Emily was born on a rainy night in October. I remember holding her for the first time. She was so small, so fragile. Margaret cried while holding her. "I promise," she whispered to our newborn daughter, "we will give you the best life possible." And we tried. Private schools, the best teachers, the best opportunities. Emily grew up surrounded by love. But somewhere along the way, something changed. The sweet little girl who used to hug me every morning slowly disappeared. In her place came someone colder, more distant, more entitled. Margaret noticed it too, especially after Emily met her future husband. Richard. I never trusted Richard. From the moment I met him, something about him felt wrong. He had this constant calculating look in his eyes. Like every conversation was secretly about money, investments, property, inheritance. Margaret once said quietly to me after dinner with them, "Daniel, that man doesn't love our daughter. He loves what she might inherit." I wanted to believe she was wrong. But deep down, I feared she wasn't. The diagnosis. 3 years ago, our lives changed forever. Margaret started feeling tired all the time. At first, we thought it was stress. But the doctors ordered tests. More tests. Then one afternoon, the doctor called us into his office. The look on his face told me everything before he even spoke. Stage 4 cancer. Aggressive. Advanced. The word terminal hung in the air like a storm cloud. Margaret squeezed my hand. But she didn't cry. Instead, she smiled at me and said softly, "We still have time." And for the next year, she fought harder than anyone I've ever seen. Chemotherapy, radiation, surgery. Some days she was so weak she could barely stand. But she still smiled, still told jokes, still asked about my day, still worried about everyone else more than herself. Even near the end, Margaret remained strong. But there was something she said one night that I never forgot. We were sitting on the porch watching the sunset. Her favorite place. The sky was painted orange and pink. Margaret held my hand and said quietly, "Daniel, promise me something. Anything. If something happens to me, don't let anyone take advantage of you." I laughed softly. Who would do that? But Margaret didn't laugh. She simply stared at the horizon and whispered. Sometimes the people closest to us surprise us the most. The funeral. The day Margaret was buried felt unreal. Hundreds of people came to say goodbye. Friends, neighbors, employees from the company. Even people Margaret had helped years ago showed up. She had touched so many lives. But the person who surprised me the most was Emily, my own daughter. She barely cried. Instead, she spent most of the funeral whispering with Richard. Their heads closed together, talking, planning, watching me. At the time, I told myself everyone grieves differently. But 2 weeks later, I discovered the truth. The betrayal. Emily and Richard came to visit one evening. They sat across from me at the kitchen table, the same table where Margaret used to serve dinner every night. Emily cleared her throat. "Dad, we need to discuss Mom's estate." I nodded slowly. "All right." Richard leaned forward like a businessman negotiating a deal. Margaret left approximately $10 million in assets. Emily slid a document across the table. Her voice was calm, cold. "According to the will, everything belongs to me." I stared at her. "What about me?" She didn't hesitate. "You get nothing." The words hit harder than any punch. 40 years of marriage. A lifetime together. And suddenly I was being told I had no place in my own wife's legacy. Then Richard added something that made my blood run cold. "You'll need to move out of the house within 30 days. That was the moment I realized something horrifying. They weren't grieving Margaret. They were celebrating her death. The truth begins to surface. The next morning, I visited Margaret's lawyer, a man who had handled our legal affairs for 20 years. Mr. Peterson studied the will Emily had shown me. Then he frowned. "This isn't the document Margaret signed." My heart began to pound. "What do you mean?" He leaned back slowly. "Margaret updated her will 6 months before she passed away." I felt a sudden chill. "And the real version?" Mr. Peterson opened a drawer and pulled out a sealed legal envelope. It can only be opened in court. And in that moment, I knew something big was about to happen. Because if my daughter had lied, the truth was about to destroy everything. The moral ending message for viewers. Greed has a strange way of revealing the true nature of people. Sometimes the greatest betrayal doesn't come from strangers. It comes from those we trusted the most. But the truth has a way of surfacing eventually. And when it does, no amount of lies can stop it. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because every story here leaves behind a lesson.